All right, so buckle up, everyone, because we are diving deep into some serious Canadian political drama.
Oh, yeah. Things are definitely heating up.
For sure. I mean, Chrystia Freeland, Canada's powerhouse finance minister, just resigned out of the blue.
It was a shocker, no doubt about it.
Big time. And to make things even spicier, guess who's adding fuel to the fire?
Well, yes, Donald Trump.
Bingo. The former U.S. president is back in the White House, and he's already stirring the pot. Talk about a recipe for intrigue, Rob.
It's definitely a situation ripe with drama.
It is, and we've got the inside scoop. We're going to be digging into excerpts from a recent news article that lays it all out: Freeland's resignation letter, Trump's, well, let's just call it colorful commentary, and the whole story behind this political earthquake.
That was juicy.
It is. So to kick things off, let's talk about the elephant, or maybe the beaver, in the room: Chrystia Freeland's resignation.
Right. I mean, this isn't just your typical cabinet shuffle. We're talking about the finance minister here, a position that holds immense power, especially in the current economic climate.
Yeah, and the timing couldn't be worse. We're not just dealing with internal Canadian politics here. You've got Trump back in the White House, and he's already talking about imposing tariffs on Canadian goods.
Those tariffs are a huge concern for Canada. Essentially, they're taxes on imported goods, and if Trump follows through, it would make Canadian products more expensive in the U.S.
Ouch.
Exactly. And that could really hurt Canadian businesses. We could see job losses, a slowdown in economic growth, the whole nine yards. It's a big deal. And it definitely helps explain why Freeland was so concerned about Trudeau's economic policies.
So let's get into the nitty-gritty here. The article highlights this friction between Freeland and Trudeau over his plans for a sales tax holiday and those $250 checks for Canadians.
Right. On the surface, it looks like Trudeau was trying to provide some relief to Canadians who are feeling the pinch of inflation and maybe score some political points in the process.
Smart political move, maybe.
Maybe, but Freeland wasn't having it. She saw those moves as what she called costly political gimmicks.
He said that.
She did. She argued that Canada simply can't afford those kinds of giveaways, especially with the threat of a trade war looming overhead.
So she was advocating for a more fiscally conservative approach.
Yeah, you could say that. She was pushing for a more cautious approach, one that prioritizes long-term economic stability over short-term political gains.
And that's what ultimately led to her resignation.
It seems so. The article suggests that this clash of economic philosophies was the final straw. She basically felt like she couldn't be part of a government that wasn't taking the economic threat from the U.S. seriously enough.
Wow, it's like a fundamental difference in how they view the world, you know?
Absolutely. And her resignation letter really hammers that point home.
What does it say?
Well, she talks about this grave challenge posed by the new Trump administration and the need for Canada to prepare for a coming tariff war.
That's a pretty stark warning.
Yeah, no kidding. And it definitely suggests that she had some serious concerns about the direction Trudeau was taking the country.
So to bring in the, shall we say, the wild card here, how big of a role do you think Trump's actions are playing in all of this? I mean, is this a case of American politics spilling over into Canada?
Well, it's undeniable that Trump's proposed tariffs have added a whole new layer of complexity to this situation.
Yeah.
I mean, they've basically created this pressure cooker environment, forcing Canada to make some tough choices, and fast. And it's put Trudeau in a really tough spot. He's trying to balance domestic political concerns, keeping Canadians happy, getting reelected, with this very real threat of a trade war with our biggest trading partner.
I bet. And then to add insult to injury, you've got Trump weighing in on Freeland's resignation on Truth Social.
Oh, yeah? What did he say?
Well, the article quotes him calling Trudeau, get this, governor.
Governor.
Yep. And he called Freeland totally toxic and said that she won't be missed. Ouch.
Classic Trump.
Right. But, it's almost like he's reveling in all the chaos.
I think you might be right. There's a part of him that definitely enjoys poking the bear.
For sure. And while his comments might seem entertaining, they actually have the potential to escalate tensions between the two countries.
Absolutely. I mean, this kind of rhetoric can make it really hard to find common ground, to negotiate solutions. It's important to remember that words have consequences, especially when they come from someone as influential as a former president.
Very true. So it sounds like we've got a perfect storm brewing here. Internal political divisions within the Liberal Party, a looming election where Trudeau's chances are looking pretty shaky, and this external pressure from Trump's policies and his colorful commentary.
You got it. And Freeland's resignation is like a crack in the dam, revealing all the pressure that's been building beneath the surface. It really raises some serious questions about the stability of the Canadian government and its ability to navigate these really turbulent waters.
Definitely a lot to unpack here.
No kidding.
But before we move on, now there's this other little detail in the article that I just can't get out of my head. It's about Dominic LeBlanc, Trudeau's new finance minister.
Oh, yeah. What about him?
Well, apparently he had dinner with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago recently.
Oh, wow, really? That's interesting.
I know, right? It seems a little odd, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, here you have Trudeau's close friend and newly appointed finance minister having dinner with the guy who's threatening to slap tariffs on Canada.
Exactly. It's like, what's going on here?
Well, I guess it's possible that the Canadian government is trying to, keep those lines of communication open, even when there are disagreements.
So more of a keep your friends close and your enemies closer kind of strategy.
Maybe, but you have to wonder if it could backfire. I mean, couldn't this be seen as Trudeau trying to appease Trump?
Right, especially after all that tough talk from Freeland.
Exactly. And let's not forget that Trump has publicly insulted Trudeau on numerous occasions.
Oh, yeah, he called him weak and indecisive. It wasn't pretty.
Not at all. So this whole dinner diplomacy thing is a bit of a head-scratcher.
It really is, and it makes me wonder, what does Freeland think about all of this? I mean, she was, after all, the chair of the Cabinet Committee on U.S. Relations. She was Trudeau's point person on all things Trump.
That's a really good point. Freeland was deeply involved in shaping Canada's response to the Trump administration. I mean, her departure, coupled with LeBlanc's dinner with Trump, it definitely raises questions about what direction Canadian foreign policy might be heading in.
You're right. It's like we're witnessing a changing of the guard, but it's not clear where the new guard is going to take us.
And with Freeland gone, Trudeau has lost his most experienced negotiator on U.S. matters, right when he needs her the most.
Exactly. I mean, talk about bad timing. And now he's left to deal with this potential trade war with a new finance minister who just had a friendly dinner with, well, the guy who's threatening to start it. It's like a political thriller in the making.
It definitely has all the elements of a high-stakes drama.
So let's zoom out for a minute and consider the bigger picture. What does Freeland's resignation and everything that's followed signal about the state of Canadian politics as a whole?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the Liberal Party is facing some internal turbulence.
In what way?
Well, you've got Trudeau under pressure from within his own ranks, his popularity is waning, and now you've got this bombshell resignation from one of his most high-profile ministers.
It's not a good look.
It's not. It all points to a government that's struggling to maintain unity and a clear sense of direction. And then on top of that, you have to remember the historical context.
What do you mean?
Well, the article points out that no Canadian Prime Minister has won 4 consecutive terms in over a century.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty daunting feat. And it suggests that Trudeau is facing an uphill battle in the next election, even without all the other challenges he's dealing with.
So not exactly smooth sailing for Trudeau.
Not even close.
Yeah.
So with all of this going on, what does this all mean for the average Canadian who's just trying to make sense of this political whirlwind?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It is, because it means that Canada is entering a period of, well, heightened uncertainty, you could say. The decisions made in the coming months are going to have a profound impact on the country's economic and political future.
So it's a time for Canadians to really pay attention.
Absolutely. To scrutinize what their leaders are doing and saying, and to hold them accountable, now more than ever.
And to recognize that their voices and their votes really do matter.
Exactly. Now, I want to go back to something we were talking about earlier, this idea of a potential shift in Canadian foreign policy.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a chance that Canada might, soften its stance towards Trump and his policies?
Yeah.
To try and avoid a trade war?
It's definitely a possibility, isn't it?
It is. With Freeland out of the picture, Trudeau might feel less pressure to, maintain a hard line against Trump. And LeBlanc, with his recent dinner diplomacy, might be more inclined to seek a compromise.
But wouldn't that be seen as a sign of weakness, like giving in to Trump's demands?
There's definitely a risk of that. I mean, it could really hurt Trudeau politically, especially among voters who already view him as being too conciliatory towards Trump.
So it's a really delicate balancing act.
It is. He has to weigh the potential economic benefits of avoiding a trade war against the potential political costs of being seen as appeasing Trump.
Tough choices ahead.
You got it.
Yeah.
And whatever decision he makes, it's going to have significant repercussions, not just for his own political future, but for the lives of everyday Canadians.
Definitely a lot riding on this.
No doubt. And it just highlights how personal this whole situation has become.
How do you mean?
Well, you've got Trump publicly insulting Trudeau and Freeland, and then you have Freeland's resignation letter, which, let's be honest, some people are interpreting as a direct attack on Trudeau's leadership.
It definitely adds another layer of complexity to the whole situation.
It does. There's a level of animosity and distrust here that you don't often see in Canadian politics, and it's spilling over into the policy arena, making it even harder to find common ground and solutions.
Yeah, it's like a political soap opera, but with real-world consequences.
Exactly. It's a reminder that politics isn't just about abstract ideas and policies. It's about people, their relationships, their emotions. And sometimes those emotions can be pretty raw.
Especially when you're dealing with high-stakes issues, like a potential trade war and a looming election. So speaking of motivations, let's go back to Freeland for a moment. What do you think her endgame is here?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, she's a smart, ambitious politician. She didn't just walk away from a powerful position for no reason.
So what's the plan, do you think?
Well, some speculate that she's positioning herself for a leadership run down the line, maybe even challenging Trudeau for the leadership of the Liberal Party.
Wow, wouldn't that be something?
It would definitely shake things up. And given Trudeau's current struggles, it wouldn't be entirely surprising.
I guess we'll have to wait and see.
We will.
Yeah.
But regardless of her long-term plans, Freeland's resignation has definitely sent shockwaves through Canadian politics. It's forced people to confront some uncomfortable truths about their government and their place in the world.
And it's raised some big questions about the future of Canada. What kind of country do Canadians want to be? What role do they want to play on the world stage?
Those are questions that Canadians are going to have to grapple with in the months and years to come. And the answers will shape the Canada of tomorrow.
Well, one thing's for sure, Canadian politics just got a whole lot more interesting.
You can say that again. We'll be here to guide you through all the twists and turns, so stay tuned.
All right, so before we wrap things up for today, all right, so we've talked about all the political maneuvering and the economic uncertainty swirling around this whole Freeland resignation. But, as we've been going through this article, there's one thing that's really stood out to me.
Yeah, what's that?
Well, it's how personal this whole thing has become. I mean, you've got Trump publicly insulting Trudeau and Freeland, and then Freeland's resignation letter, which some people are interpreting as a thinly veiled jab at Trudeau's leadership.
Yeah, it's definitely gotten pretty heated.
Yeah.
There's a level of animosity here that you don't typically see in Canadian politics.
Exactly. And, there's one line in Freeland's letter that really struck me. She wrote, "Canadians know when we are working for them, and they equally know when we are focused on ourselves."
Ooh, yeah. That's a pretty pointed statement.
It is. And, it makes me wonder, is she subtly calling out Trudeau? Is she suggesting that he's more focused on, I don't know, political survival than on actually serving the needs of Canadians?
It's certainly open to interpretation.
Yeah.
But regardless of Freeland's intentions, I think it raises a really important question that we should all be asking ourselves.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that our leaders are truly working for us? How do we hold them accountable?
Right, because at the end of the day, this isn't just about politics. It's about people's lives.
Exactly. And I think that's what gets lost sometimes in all the political back and forth. We need to remember that these decisions, these policies, have real-world consequences for people.
Absolutely. I mean, take the potential trade war with the U.S., for example. If that happens, it's not just politicians who are going to feel the pain. It's Canadian businesses, workers, families.
Right. We could see higher prices for everyday goods, job losses, a slowdown in the economy. It could have a ripple effect across the entire country.
So yeah, the stakes are pretty high.
They are.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with this. Canadian politics is at a crossroads. Freeland's resignation has exposed some deep divisions, and the threat of a trade war with the U.S. is looming large. It's a lot to process, but it's also a time for Canadians to be informed, engaged, and most importantly, to make their voices heard.
Well said. The choices that are made in the coming months are going to shape the Canada of tomorrow. So yeah, now is the time to step up and get involved.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure, as always.
Until next time, stay curious and keep learning.